Ethan Walsh stared at his bank statement with growing dread. The numbers hadn't changed since yesterday. $142.37 was all he had to his name. Rent was due in 3 days. His gig at the local bar had paid less than expected, and the music studio where he taught guitar lessons had cut his hours. At 28, he hadn't expected to be this broke. Living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment with peeling wallpaper and unreliable heating, the eviction notice taped to his door that morning had been the final straw. He needed $850 by Monday, or he'd be out on the street with nothing but his guitar and a duffel bag of clothes. He scrolled through his phone. It's past all the contacts he'd already borrowed money from. His parents were struggling with medical bills, and his friends were barely making ends meet themselves. Desperation drove him to post an ad online. Roommate needed immediately. Small apartment, shared space, $425 a month. Serious inquiries only. The response came within an hour. Interested. Can pay in cash today. Meet at Riverside Cafe at 6 p.m. Ethan arrived early, nursing a cup of coffee he couldn't afford. Cafe was nearly empty on a Tuesday afternoon, making it easy to spot newcomers. At precisely 4 o'clock, the door swung open. The woman who entered made every head turn. She wasn't conventionally beautiful. Her features were too sharp, too perfectly symmetrical, but something about her commanded attention. Her hair was a deep auburn that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Her eyes were a startling amber color that reminded Ethan of a sunset he'd once seen while camping in the mountains. "You must be Ethan," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Her voice had an unusual cadence, almost musical, with an accent he couldn't place. "Yes, and your V?" he asked, extending his hand. She looked at it for a moment before lightly touching her fingertips to his. "Vera," she said. "My name is Vera Noctis." Her skin was unusually warm, almost feverish, and Ethan pulled his hand away quickly. "So, about the apartment, I have the money," she interrupted, placing a small envelope on the table. "In cash, as requested." Ethan blinked in surprise. "Don't you want to see the place first? Is it secure? Private? With minimal surveillance?" Her questions were precise, clinical, I guess. "It's just a basic apartment in a quiet building. No doorman or security cameras, if that's what you're asking." Vera nodded, satisfied. "Then it will suffice." "However, I should mention that I have certain requirements." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What kind of requirements?" "I work nights. I require absolute darkness during daylight hours for sleep. I don't eat meat." "Wait." She hesitated. "I understand the apartment has only one bedroom. This is acceptable as long as boundaries are established." "Look, I wasn't suggesting I'm not concerned with human mating rituals," Vera said matter-of-factly. "I simply need shelter. I can share the bed if necessary, but with strict rules. A divider down the middle, no physical contact, and no questions about my personal affairs." Ethan stared at her, trying to process her strange way of speaking. "Human mating? You know what? Never mind. I'm desperate enough that I'll agree to your terms, but I have some conditions too. No drugs, no illegal activities, and you help with utilities." "Agreed," Vera said immediately. "When can I move in?" "Today, I guess." "I'm not exactly in a position to be picky." They walked the 6 blocks to his apartment in silence. Ethan noticed that Vera carried only a small backpack, unusual for someone moving in. Her gaze constantly swept their surroundings, alert and wary. Like she was expecting trouble at the apartment, Ethan gave a quick tour. Bathroom, kitchen, living room, and bedroom. "It's not much, but it's clean." Vera moved through the space with unusual grace, examining windows and door locks with special attention. She paused at the bedroom, eyeing the double bed pushed against the wall. "This will work. I'll require the side away from the window." As Ethan showed her the kitchen, Vera suddenly froze, her head tilting slightly as if listening to something he couldn't hear. "What's that sound?" Ethan listened, but heard nothing. "What sound?" "Never mind," she said quickly. "It's nothing important." That night, Ethan constructed a makeshift barrier down the center of the bed using pillows. Vera watched with what might have been amusement in her strange amber eyes. "Is this sufficient?" he asked, feeling awkward about the whole situation. It will serve its purpose, she replied, placing her backpack carefully in the closet. Remember the rules, Ethan Walsh? Your side, my side, no crossing the line. As they settled into their respective sides of the bed, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just invited something entirely unknown into his life. Little did he know that the mysterious woman lying just inches away wasn't just from another country or culture. She was from another world entirely. 3 weeks into their living arrangement, Ethan was compiling a mental list of Vera's peculiarities. She never used the shower. Instead, wiping herself down with a cloth soaked in an oddly sweet-smelling solution she kept in a metallic flask. She claimed it was a cultural practice from her homeland, which she vaguely described as far to the east. When Ethan practiced guitar in the evenings, Vera would sit perfectly still, watching his fingers with an intensity that made him self-conscious. Once, when he played a particularly complex chord progression, she had gasped softly, her amber eyes widening. "Is something wrong?" he had asked. "The vibrations," she murmured. They, resonate with me." Most nights Ethan would wake to find Vera's side of the bed empty. She'd be standing by the window, staring up at the stars with such longing it made his chest ache. Sometimes she held a small device that emitted soft pulsing lights in patterns that reminded him of Morse code. "Insomnia?" he had asked once. "No," she replied without turning from the window. "I'm just... listening." Then there were the electronics. Whenever Vera came near Ethan's phone or laptop, they would malfunction, screens flickering, batteries draining rapidly. His old radio would suddenly tune into strange frequencies, broadcasting what sounded like whispers in an unknown language. "Sorry," she would say, backing away from the devices. "I have an unusual electromagnetic field, a medical condition." One morning, Ethan woke to find Vera examining a cut on her palm. Instead of red, her blood was a shimmering, silvery fluid that seemed to evaporate upon contact with air. She caught him staring and quickly closed her hand. "A side effect of my medication," she explained. But her eyes darted away nervously. That evening, a delivery man brought a package that Vera had ordered. She became agitated when Ethan nearly opened it. "It's private," she said, snatching it from his hands. Later, he glimpsed her assembling what looked like a miniature satellite dish on their tiny balcony. The strangest incident occurred when Mrs. Patel from next door brought her cat while asking to borrow some sugar. The normally placid animal had taken one look at Vera and transformed into a hissing, spitting ball of fur, its back arched impossibly high. "Animals don't like me," Vera had said simply, as Mrs. Patel struggled to control her pet. That night, lying on his side of their divided bed, Ethan studied Vera's profile in the darkness. She wasn't asleep. She never seemed to truly sleep, but had her eyes closed, her breathing measured and deliberate. "Vera," he whispered, "where are you really from?" Her eyes opened, reflecting the scant moonlight like a nocturnal animal's. "Far away," she answered, "somewhere you couldn't possibly imagine." Ethan wanted to press further, but something in her expression made him hesitate. Whatever secrets she was keeping, they weighed on her heavily. Despite their odd arrangement and her countless peculiarities, he was beginning to care for this strange woman with the amber eyes and musical voice. As if reading his thoughts, Vera turned away. "Remember the rules, Ethan?" she said quietly. "Some lines shouldn't be crossed." The storm arrived without warning, dark clouds swallowing the evening sky as Ethan returned from a gig. Lightning danced between buildings, and the air hummed with electrical energy. Inside the apartment, he found Vera in a state of panic. Her devices were scattered across the floor, all of them blinking and emitting high-pitched tones. Her skin seemed to shimmer, flashes of light moving beneath the surface like electric currents. "What's happening?" Ethan asked, dropping his guitar. "Case they've found me," Vera whispered, her accent more pronounced in her distress. "The storm, it's not natural." Lightning struck nearby, and the apartment plunged into darkness. In the momentary flash, Ethan saw Vera's form shift, her silhouette elongating, her features becoming sharper, more angular. "Vera, what's going on?" His voice trembled. "What are you?" Tremendous crack of thunder shook the building. One of Vera's devices exploded in a shower of sparks, illuminating the room long enough for Ethan to see Vera clearly. Her skin was translucent, revealing a network of glowing veins beneath. Her eyes had expanded, consuming much of her face, and her fingers had elongated into delicate, branch-like appendages. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice resonating on multiple frequencies simultaneously. "I never meant to involve you." Ethan backed against the wall, his heart pounding. "Are you ... not human?" Vera closed her eyes, and when she opened them, she had mostly returned to her human appearance, though her skin still pulsed with subtle light. "No," she admitted. "I come from a system you call HD 189733b, what your astronomers consider an exoplanet. My people are energy-based beings who can assume physical form through a process. Your science would call matter condensation." Another lightning bolt struck, closer this time, and Vera winced, as if in pain. "Those aren't ordinary storms," she continued, her detection probes scanning for my energy signature. "I'm a scientist who discovered something ... dangerous. Something the ruling conclave wanted suppressed. They sentenced me to dissolution, so I fled." "To Earth?" Ethan asked, struggling to comprehend. "Your planet is considered primitive, beneath notice. The perfect hiding place." Her fingers worked frantically to repair one of her devices. "These are signal scramblers. They've masked my presence until now, but this storm, it's overloading." "Them?" Ethan stared at her. This woman, this being who had shared his bed for weeks. He should have been terrified, should have run. Instead, he found himself moving toward her. "How can I help?" he asked. Vera looked up, surprise evident in her luminous eyes. "You believe me? You're not afraid?" "I'm terrified," he admitted. "But you've had countless opportunities to harm me and didn't. Whatever you are, I know you're not dangerous." Something like gratitude flashed across Vera's face. "I need to recalibrate the primary scrambler. It requires a specific frequency, like music," Ethan suggested, remembering her reaction to his guitar. Vera's eyes widened. Yes, harmonic vibrations could stabilize the energy matrix. Ethan grabbed his guitar and began to play, following Vera's instructions to adjust the pitch and rhythm. Outside, the lightning became less frequent, the thunder more distant. As the storm receded, Vera's devices settled back into their subtle humming. She collapsed into a chair, her form fluctuating between human and something decidedly not. "Thank you," she said softly. "You've bought me time." Ethan set his guitar aside and knelt before her. "How long have you been running what you would call 3 Earth years?" "I've been on your planet for 6 months." She looked at him with those impossible amber eyes. "You should leave now. They'll send hunters next." "Being near me isn't safe." Ethan thought about his life before Vera, the endless struggle to pay bills, the loneliness, the feeling that something was missing. Whatever danger she brought, she had also brought wonder. "I'm staying," he said firmly. "We'll figure this out together." Vera shook her head. "There's something else you should know. Physical contact with my kind is problematic for humans. Our energy can disrupt your electrical impulses, damage your nervous system. That's why I insisted on the barrier." Ethan remembered the warmth of her fingertips the day they met, the strange tingling sensation. "Is that why you avoid touching me?" "Yes," she whispered. "I could harm you without meaning to. The more I care for someone, the more dangerous it becomes." The implication hung in the air between them. Vera had been protecting him all along, not just from her pursuers, but from herself. Days after the storm revelation, Ethan and Vera established a new normal. The barrier remained in place, more crucial than ever, but the secrets between them had dissolved. Ethan learned that Vera's research had discovered a way to share energy between different species, a finding that threatened the Conclave's control over resource distribution. "So you're basically a refugee scientist," Ethan said one evening as they sat on opposite ends of the sofa, sharing takeout. "That's an apt comparison," Vera replied, carefully examining her noodles before eating them. "Though on my world, I was considered more of a revolutionary." Ethan watched her struggle with chopsticks, her elongated fingers occasionally shifting form when she wasn't concentrating. These glimpses of her true nature no longer startled him. Can all your people change shape like you do? Matter manipulation is a basic skill? Yes, she explained. Children learn it before they learn to communicate. But maintaining a foreign form, especially one as dense as a human body, is exhausting. That explained why she always seemed tired, why she stood by the window at night. You're recharging from the stars, he realized. Vera nodded. Stellar radiation sustains me. Sun is adequate, but different from my home star. Do you miss it? Your home? Something like sorrow crossed her features. I miss the crystal forests that sing when the 3 moons align. I miss diving through the atmospheric layers where light bends into colors your eyes could never perceive. She set down her food. But I cannot miss the rigid hierarchy, the suppression of ideas, the punishment of difference. Ethan found himself wanting to comfort her, to take her hand, but the invisible danger between them prevented it. Instead, he picked up his guitar and began playing a soft melody he'd been composing inspired by her descriptions of her world. Vera closed her eyes, her form relaxing, edges softening. That's beautiful, she whispered. It sounds like home. That night, Ethan awoke to find Vera sitting up in bed, staring at the pillow barrier between them. What's wrong? He asked groggily. I've been calculating, she said, her voice tight. The longer I stay in this form among humans, the more my energy signature adapts. Eventually, I may become compatible with your physiological structure. Ethan sat up, suddenly wide awake. You mean we could touch? Without hurting me? Theoretically? But it would require me to permanently alter my fundamental composition. I would never be able to return to my original form. Her amber eyes met his. I would be giving up my past to gain a future. The weight of what she was suggesting settled over them. Ethan thought carefully before responding. I would never ask you to give up who you are, he said finally. Not even for this. He gestured to the space between them. Vera's expression softened. That is why it might be worth it, she whispered. A shrill alarm from one of her devices shattered. The moment. Vera leaped from the bed, rushing to the window. A pinpoint of light was moving unnaturally across the night sky. They found me, she said, voice hollow. A scout ship. The hunters will follow. Ethan joined her at the window, careful to maintain distance. How long do we have? Days? Perhaps less. She turned to face him, her form flickering between human and alien in her distress. Ethan, I need to leave now. Tonight, if I stay, they'll discover you too. Where would you go? There's a research outpost in Antarctica. The magnetic field there could mask my presence long enough to build a more permanent solution. Ethan felt his chest tighten. The thought of Vera leaving, of never seeing her again, was suddenly unbearable. In just weeks, this alien woman had transformed his world, shown him wonders he'd never imagined. Let me come with you, he said. Vera shook her head. You have a life here, your music, your friends. A life that's better with you in it, he argued. Even with all the danger, all the barriers between us, these weeks have been the most alive I've ever felt. For the first time, Vera reached toward him, her hand hovering just above his cheek without touching. Then I face an impossible choice, she whispered. Risk losing myself to stay with you, or lose you to remain myself. The hunters arrived at dawn 3 days later. Ethan woke to find Vera frantically gathering her devices. Outside, the sky had taken on an unnatural purple hue, and electronic devices throughout the building were failing phones dead. Alarms blaring randomly. They're scanning the city, Vera explained, her form fluctuating rapidly between human and alien as her concentration faltered. I've disabled my scramblers to draw them away from populated areas. You're using yourself as a bait, Ethan realized. Vera, no, it's the only way, she insisted. I've arranged transport to a remote location. Once there, I'll attempt to communicate, to explain my research. Perhaps after all this time, they'll listen. Ethan grabbed his guitar case. I'm coming with you, Ethan. I'm not asking permission. They made it 3 blocks before the air around them began to shimmer. A vehicle unlike any Ethan had seen materialized at the end of the street's leak, almost liquid in appearance, hovering silently above the asphalt. Too late, Vera whispered, pushing Ethan into an alley. Stay hidden. before he could protest. She stepped into the street, facing the vessel. Her human disguise fell away completely, revealing her true form of being of translucent, crystalline structure with patterns of light flowing through her like constellations. 3 figures emerged from the craft, similar to Vera, but larger, their light patterns more rigid and uniform. They communicated in pulses of light and sound that hurt Ethan's ears. Vera responded, her tone defiant, even in this alien language. Ethan couldn't understand the words, but he recognized the emotions: pride, fear, determination. The exchange grew heated. One hunter extended what looked like a weapon. Vera stood her ground, her light patterns flaring defensively. Without thinking, Ethan stepped from the alley, guitar in hand. He began to play the melody he'd composed for Vera, the one that reminded her of home. The hunters turned toward him, their forms rippling with what might have been surprise. Vera called out in English, "Ethan, run!" Instead, he played louder, pouring everything he felt for her into the music. The vibrations seemed to affect the hunters, their light patterns destabilizing. Vera seized the moment of confusion, rushed to Ethan's side, her form glowing intensely. "Keep playing," she urged. As the melody continued, Vera began to sing not in words, but in pure tones that harmonized with his guitar. The combination created patterns of sound that made the air itself vibrate. The hunters retreated, clearly disoriented by the harmonic assault. Their vessel's surface rippled like disturbed water. "It's working," Vera gasped. "The frequency is disrupting their ability to maintain cohesion." One hunter fired its weapon, but the energy beam dissipated in the resonant field around them. They communicated urgently among themselves before retreating to their vessel, which shimmered and vanished. Ethan lowered his guitar, hands shaking. "Did we win?" "Not permanently," Vera replied, gradually resuming her human form. "But we've confused them. They'll report this anomaly, which buys us time." She looked at him with new understanding. "Your music hit's more powerful than I realized. It created a harmonic shield." "You make a good team," Ethan said, smiling. Despite the danger, Vera didn't smile back. "They'll return with reinforcements. More hunters, specifically attuned to counter the harmonics." She took a deep breath. "I've made my decision." That evening, as sunset painted the sky in colors that reminded Vera of home, she prepared her most complex device on their small balcony. "This will permanently alter my energy signature," she explained. "If successful, I'll appear human too. They're scanners, and to your biology." She looked at Ethan. "But there's no going back. I'll never be able to return to my world or my natural state." Ethan watched her work, conflict evident in his expression. "Are you sure this is what you want? You'd be giving up everything." "Not everything," Vera said softly. "Sometimes finding a new home means leaving an old one behind." The device hummed to life as stars began appearing overhead. Vera stepped into the field it generated, her form illuminated by swirling energy. "Whatever happens," she told Ethan, "know that you showed me something my people have forgotten, that connection is worth the risk." The transformation was both beautiful and terrible. Vera's body arced with light, her true form visible for one glorious moment before collapsing inward. She cried out a sound that resonated on multiple frequencies, as the very essence of her being restructured itself. When the light faded, Vera stood trembling, looking entirely human except for her amber eyes, which still held hints of otherworldly light. Ethan approached cautiously. "Did it work?" Slowly, hesitantly, Vera extended her hand. Ethan reached out, their fingers hovering a breath apart. Then, for the first time, they touched without barrier or consequence. "It worked," she whispered, tears streaming down her now fully human face. "I can feel you without hurting you." Ethan pulled her close, the barrier between them finally gone. Outside, the night sky remained calm. No hunters, no storms, no threat. For now, at least, they were safe. "Welcome home," he murmured against her hair. Vera looked up at the stars, her old home now forever out of reach hand, then at Ethan, her new home standing right before her.
Ow!
"The hunters may still come," she warned. "My transformation isn't perfect," Ethan smiled. "Then we'll face them. Together, with music, with science, with whatever it takes." That night, they removed the pillow barrier that had divided their bed for so long. As they lay together under the stars visible through their small window, Vera realized that sometimes the greatest discoveries weren't made in laboratories or distant worlds, but in the space between two hearts that had once seemed impossibly far apart.